I must keep you safe.
The sun was hot in the small Nigerian village of Umuaka. It was the kind of hot that made even the chickens hide under the mango tree and made women tie wrappers over their heads to keep the sweat from running into their eyes. Ada was walking slowly toward the river, carrying her basin on her head. She had clothes to wash, and the river was the only place that gave her peace. Life had not been easy for Ada. She had lost her parents when she was still young, and she lived alone in a small mud house at the edge of the village. People said she was strong, but she knew how often she cried at night when nobody could see. The river was her friend, her comfort, the only place where she could pour her tears without shame. That day, as she walked through the bush path, she was thinking about her life, about how lonely she felt, and about how she wished something would change. The air smelled of wet earth because it had rained the night before. The leaves on the trees glistened as if they had been polished by the sky. Birds sang in the branches, and the sound of the river grew louder as she came closer. She was tired, but she was calm, because the river always calmed her. She bent low under a fallen branch, shifted the heavy basin on her head, and finally reached the riverbank. The water was wide and shining, moving gently under the sun. She set her basin down, tied her wrapper tighter, and stepped into the cool water to begin her washing. She was humming a slow song her mother used to sing when something touched her leg. She thought it was just a leaf or maybe a small fish, but when she looked down, she saw a glass bottle bumping softly against her ankle. At first, Ada did not think much of it. Bottles floated down the river sometimes, thrown away by careless people from the town upstream. She picked it up, ready to throw it into the grass, but then her eyes caught something strange. The bottle was not empty. Inside it, something moved. Ada blinked and stared harder. Her heart began to beat fast. She almost dropped the bottle, but her hands froze, unable to let go. Inside the clear glass was a man. A real man, though very small, no bigger than her thumb. He was dressed in white, and his eyes looked tired, but they were open, and they were staring at her. Ada gasped loudly, her voice echoing across the riverbank. She turned left and right to see if anyone else was there, but she was alone. The man pressed his tiny palms against the glass, his lips moving, but no sound came out. Ada's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, but the sound refused to leave her chest. Slowly, she sat down on a rock, holding the bottle in both hands, her wrapper dripping with river water. She whispered, "What are you?" But the man only shook his head and pointed at the cork that sealed the top of the bottle. Ada shook her head. "No, I cannot open you. I don't even know if you are human or spirit. I don't know what will happen." But still she could not take her eyes off him. His face was handsome, even though it was full of pain. His eyes looked like someone begging, someone who had lost everything. Ada felt a strange pull in her chest. She remembered her own loneliness, her own empty nights, and she wondered if he too had cried where nobody could hear him. She held the bottle close, and her heart beat faster and faster. She whispered again, "Who put you in here?" But of course he could not answer. He only looked at her with those eyes that seemed to carry stories too heavy for words. Ada did not wash her clothes that day. She sat by the river for a long time, turning the bottle in her hands, staring at the little man inside. Sometimes she thought she was dreaming. Sometimes she thought she was going mad. But each time she tried to convince herself it was not real, the man would move, pressing his hands against the glass again, and she knew it was real. Finally, she stood up, placed the bottle gently inside her basin, and covered it with her wrapper. She could not leave it by the river. Something in her heart told her it belonged to her now, whether she wanted it or not. As she walked back home, the path seemed longer than ever. Her legs felt heavy, as if she carried not only the bottle but also the weight of its secret. When she reached her small house, she locked the door quickly and placed the bottle on her wooden table. She stared at it again, shaking her head. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why did the river give you to me?" That night, Ada could not sleep. She lay on her mat, staring at the roof, listening to the bottle glow softly in the dark. The man inside sat quietly, his head bowed. But as the night grew deeper, Ada heard something. It was not a normal sound. It was like a whisper, soft and thin, floating inside her mind. "Help me," the voice said. Ada sat up quickly, looking at the bottle. The man had lifted his head. His lips moved, and though no sound came out, she heard his words clearly in her head. "Help me," he said again. Ada covered her mouth with both hands, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to run, but she could not. Her heart was already tied to him. She whispered shakily, "Who put you in here?" And slowly, with a voice heavy with sorrow, he answered in her mind, "A woman. She wanted to keep me. She wanted my wealth. She used a charm. And the river goddess, she took me." Ada sat with her back against the mud wall of a small house, staring at the bottle on the table. The voice still echoed in her head, "A woman, she wanted to keep me, the river goddess took me." Ada hugged her knees, her whole body trembling. She had grown up hearing stories about river spirits. Her grandmother used to warn her never to stay too long by the water, never to pick strange things, never to answer when the river called her name. But now, here she was, with a strange man in a bottle speaking into her mind. The night air was heavy. The crickets outside chirped, but their song no longer felt normal. It was as if even they were whispering about the bottle. Ada buried her face in her wrapper, but sleep refused to come. The man in the bottle kept looking at her, his eyes deep with sadness. Finally, Ada gathered courage and whispered, "Tell me everything. Who are you? How did you enter this prison?" The man placed his small palm against the glass. His lips moved again, and his voice filled Ada's mind, soft and broken like someone telling a story for the last time. "My name is Chaik," he said. "I was once a wealthy man. I owned lands, cattle, and palm oil barns. People respected me, men bowed before me, and women wanted me. But I made a mistake. I loved a woman who did not love me the way I loved her. She loved what I had, not who I was. She went to the river goddess for power. The goddess gave her a charm to trap me. And so, here I am. A prisoner in this bottle. A husband under the sea." Ada's eyes widened. Her hands shook. She had heard of charms, of women using powers to tie men's hearts, but never had she seen the result so clearly. She whispered, "So while you are here, what happens to you under the water?" Chaik lowered his head. His voice cracked. "I am married to her. To the goddess. Every night under her kingdom, I am her husband. But my heart is empty. I am alive, but I am not free." Ada listened with her hand pressed against her chest. She could feel Chaik's pain as if it were her own. She imagined him in the dark waters, tied to a throne beside a goddess with eyes like fire and a laugh like thunder. She imagined him forced to smile, forced to dance, forced to be a king in chains. Ada wiped her tears with the edge of her wrapper. "But why did the goddess agree?" she asked. "Why did she take you?" Chaik sighed, his voice heavy. "The goddess feeds on love and wealth. She saw my riches, she saw my strength, she saw my foolishness." When the woman brought the charm, the goddess laughed. She said, "You want him to love you forever. You want his wealth to never leave your hands. Then he will belong to me first." And so she tied me. She took me under her water palace. She dressed me in silk, she placed a crown on my head, and she called me her husband. But I was not free. My body sat with her, but my soul was trapped in this bottle, floating from shore to shore, crying for someone to find me. Ada shook her head slowly, her eyes wide with fear and pity. She remembered her grandmother's words again, the river goddess never gives without taking. Her gifts are chains. Ada whispered, and the woman who put you there. Where is she now? Chike's face darkened. She is in the village somewhere, living with my wealth, calling herself blessed. She does not know that each night, I am dragged under to the palace of the goddess. She only knows that I cannot escape her charm. Ada felt anger rise in her chest, anger for the unknown woman who had done this, anger for the goddess who used human lives like toys. She wanted to smash the bottle and free him, but her hands froze. She did not know what power might pour out if she broke it. Chike's tiny eyes met hers again. Ada, he whispered. You found me because your heart is clean. Please, don't leave me here. Don't let me remain her slave. Ada pressed the bottle against her chest and rocked back and forth like a mother with a sick child. She wanted to help him, but she was afraid. She had no knowledge of charms. She had no strength to fight a goddess. She was just a poor girl with no family, no husband, no child. But as she held the bottle, she felt something strange, like a small flame lighting inside her heart. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was destiny. She whispered, what can I do? How can I free you from her? Chike lifted his small head, his voice trembling. It will not be easy. To break the bottle, you must break the bond. To break the bond, you must face the goddess herself. She will not let me go. She will test you. She will tempt you. She will try to drown you in her lies. But if you stand, if you fight, then maybe, just maybe, I can be free. Ada's body shook. Her breath came fast. How could she face a goddess when she could barely face her own loneliness? But then she thought of her nights, empty and long. She thought of the way people in the village looked at her with pity. She thought of her mother's face, gentle and strong, whispering to her, Ada, you were born to carry light into dark places. Ada stood up slowly, clutching the bottle. If the goddess wants to test me, then let her come, she said in a shaky voice. I will not let you suffer forever. Outside, the wind rose suddenly, blowing dust into the air. The leaves of the trees shook as if they had heard her vow. And far away, deep in the river, a shadow stirred. The goddess had heard too. The morning after Ada made her promise to Chike, the whole village seemed different to her eyes. The sun still rose in its golden strength, the palm trees still swayed gently in the breeze, and the women still sang as they pounded yam in their wooden mortars. But to Ada, everything carried a hidden weight, as if unseen eyes were watching from behind the leaves, from beneath the soil, from under the water. She fetched water from the stream, but the stream no longer looked like ordinary water. She saw faces rippling in it, faint like smoke, gone when she blinked. She carried her calabash carefully back home, her heart racing. At the market, when she tried to buy pepper, the seller looked at her strangely and whispered, the river follows you. Ada almost dropped her basket. She wanted to ask what the woman meant, but her voice froze in her throat. She hurried home, holding the basket tight. That night, she could not eat. She sat on the floor, staring at the bottle glowing faintly on her table. Chike was silent, his head bowed, but his silence spoke louder than words. Ada whispered, she knows, doesn't she? The goddess knows I found you. Chike raised his eyes slowly, pain in them like a wound. Yes. She always knows. She is water. She is the air. When you pulled me from the river, you touched her kingdom. She is watching now. Ada shivered, her wrapper tight around her shoulders. The candle beside her flickered though there was no wind. Outside, the dogs barked wildly at nothing. Inside her heart, fear grew roots. In her sleep that night, Ada dreamed again. But this time, it was not the dream of waves pulling Chike into a bottle. This time, she stood at the edge of a wide palace made of water. The walls were not stone but liquid, shimmering and moving like glass that breathed. The floor was gold, glowing under her bare feet, and the ceiling was the endless sky of the sea. On a throne of shells and coral sat the goddess. She was tall and beautiful, her skin shining like the moon, her hair flowing down like rivers of black silk. Her eyes were sharp, glowing green, and her smile was wide, but not warm. Beside her throne stood Chike, dressed in white cloth with golden chains around his wrists and ankles. His face was blank, like a man who had forgotten his own name. Ada ran forward in the dream, shouting, "Chike! Chike, it's me!" But when he turned to her, his eyes were empty, like glass. The goddess laughed, her voice echoing like thunder. "You dare call his name? He is mine. His wealth is mine. His soul is mine. Who are you to challenge me, poor child of dust?" Ada trembled in the dream, her lips shaking, but she stood tall. "I am Ada, and I will not fear you. I will not let him suffer." The goddess rose from her throne, her body stretching taller than the tallest palm tree, her voice booming. "Then you have chosen war. You have chosen to bleed." The dream shattered like broken glass, and Ada woke up screaming, sweat soaking her wrapper, her chest rising and falling fast. She turned to the table. The bottle shook violently on its own. Chike was awake, his tiny hands pressed against the glass, his eyes wide with fear. "She has seen you," he whispered in her mind. "You entered her palace. Now she will not rest." From that day, Ada's life was no longer quiet. Strange things followed her everywhere. When she fetched water, fish leapt from the river and flopped at her feet, their eyes glowing before they died. When she walked through the village, women whispered behind her back, saying her shadow was longer than it should be, stretching even when the sun was overhead. At night, she heard footsteps around her hut, though when she rushed outside, nobody was there. Sometimes she heard her name called sweetly by a woman's voice, but when she answered, silence swallowed the air. The villagers began to avoid her. Children ran away when she passed. Even Gozi, her closest friend, grew distant, her eyes filled with suspicion. Ada cried many nights, clutching the bottle. "Why did you choose me?" she wept. "Why not another person?" Chike's voice came softly, trembling. "Because only you saw me. Others would have thrown me back. You picked me, and so the goddess marked you." Ada wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "What will she do to me?" Chike lowered his head. "She will test you. She will tempt you with wealth, with beauty, with love. She will scare you with nightmares and storms. She will break your heart and try to drown your soul. But if you stand, Ada, if you refuse her, then I may yet be free." Ada held the bottle tighter, her lips pressed to the glass. "Then I will stand," she whispered, though her voice shook. Outside, the wind blew strong, carrying the sound of rushing water even though the river was far. The goddess was moving. She had begun her game. The morning came heavy with clouds. The sky was grey, and the air smelled of rain, though no drop had fallen yet. Ada woke up weak, her body shaking from the dream of the goddess. She wanted to stay inside, but she had no choice, her belly was empty, and she needed food. She wrapped her old wrapper around her waist, picked her basket, and walked to the market. The market was crowded with noise and laughter, but as Ada entered, the voices seemed to hush. People looked at her with side eyes, whispering behind their hands. Ada kept her head low and went to buy yam. As she picked the tubers, a woman she had never seen before appeared beside her. She was tall, her skin glowing like oil, her wrapper new and shining. Around her neck were beads that glistened like fresh water. Her smile was wide, too wide, and her eyes looked like the deep river. "Ada," the woman said softly, though Ada had not told her name. Ada froze, her heart beating fast. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. The woman's smile grew. "I am a friend. I have come to help you. You are poor, Ada. You suffer. You have no family, no husband, no wealth. But I can change that. I can make you rich, richer than all these women here. All you have to do is give me the bottle. Ada's basket fell from her hand. She stepped back, her chest tight. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. The woman's voice grew softer, sweeter. Just give me the bottle, Ada. You will never hunger again. Ada closed her eyes and whispered, You are not a woman. You are her. You are the goddess. When she opened her eyes again, the woman was gone. Only the crowd of buyers remained, shouting prices, laughing, living their normal lives. Ada bent quickly, picked her yam, and ran home with her heart beating like a drum. That night, the storm came. It began with a soft wind that whistled through the cracks of her mud walls. Ada sat with the bottle on her lap, her wrapper pulled tightly around her shoulders. Jack was silent, his tiny face pale. She came to me, Ada whispered. She asked for you. She promised me wealth. Jack lifted his head slowly, his eyes sad. She will not stop. She knows your weakness. She knows your hunger. She will tempt you. She will tempt you until your heart breaks. But you must not give me to her. Ada pressed her forehead against the bottle. I will not give you. Even if I starve, I will not. But as she said this, the wind grew stronger. The candle went out. Darkness filled the room. Then the rain came, not ordinary rain but hard, heavy drops that struck the roof like stones. Thunder cracked so loud the ground shook. Water rushed under the door, filling the floor quickly. Ada jumped to her feet, holding the bottle high. Jack, she cried, she wants to drown me. The voice of the goddess filled the room, not loud but clear, coming from everywhere at once. Give him to me, Ada. Drop him into the water. Save yourself. Ada's heart raced. The water rose to her ankles, then to her knees. The walls shook, mud falling from the corners. No, she screamed. I will not give him to you. She climbed onto her wooden stool, holding the bottle above her head. The storm roared louder, thunder and rain mixing into one great noise. Then suddenly, just as quickly as it came, it stopped. The rain ended. The wind died. The water on the floor sank back into the earth. The night became quiet again. Ada fell to her knees, shaking and crying, the bottle still in her hands. By morning, Ada's hut looked broken. The floor was soaked, her stool had cracked, and her clothes floated in muddy water. The villagers came to see, and they shook their heads. This is not ordinary, they whispered. This is marine work. Ada has called the river into her house. Some warned her to go to the shrine of Mama Ijoma, the old priestess. Others told her to throw the bottle back into the river before it destroyed the whole village. But Ada kept quiet. She could not tell them the truth. She hid the bottle under her wrapper and said nothing. When the villagers left, she sat alone, tears running down her face. Jack, she whispered, I don't know how long I can bear this. She is stronger than me. She will not stop. Jack pressed his small hand against the glass. His voice came weak but sure. You are stronger than you think, Ada. She wants to scare you, but she cannot touch your heart unless you let her. Hold on. Please. You are my only hope. Ada nodded slowly, though her tears did not stop. She stood, cleaned the mud as best as she could, and promised herself she would not give in. But deep inside, fear and doubt grew. She was only a poor girl, and the goddess was a queen of the waters. How could she win this fight? That night, as she lay on her mat, she heard the river's voice calling her name softly again and again, Ada. 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 She covered her ears with her hands, but still the voice entered her heart. The battle had only just begun. The sun rose weakly that morning, hiding behind a pale sky. Ada sat outside her hut, her wrapper still wet from the night storm. Her eyes were heavy, her face tired, her heart restless. She knew she could not fight the goddess alone. The whispers of the villagers kept coming back to her mind. Go to Mama Ijeoma. Mama Ijeoma was the old priestess who lived at the edge of the village, near the great cotton tree. People feared her, but they also respected her. They said she could see things beyond the eyes of men, and she spoke with the spirits of the river and the forest. Ada held the bottle under her wrapper and walked slowly to the priestess's hut. Every step felt heavy, as if the ground itself did not want her to go. When she reached, the hut was quiet, the door open. She called softly, Mama Ijeoma. Mama, but before she could finish, a voice from inside said, Come in, Ada. I have been waiting for you. Ada froze, her heart beating fast. She had not told anyone she was coming. She stepped into the dim hut, where smoke from burning herbs filled the air. Mama Ijeoma sat on a mat, her hair white as cotton, her eyes sharp and deep. She looked at Ada, then at the hidden bottle, and nodded slowly. You have brought trouble into this village, child, she said, her voice both soft and heavy. Sit and tell me everything. Ada sank to the mat, her tears spilling as she told her story from the day she found the bottle at the river. Mama Ijeoma listened in silence, her face unreadable, her fingers tracing strange symbols in the dust. When Ada finished, the hut grew very quiet. Only the sound of the burning herbs crackled. Then Mama Ijeoma spoke. You are holding a man, not an ordinary man, but one who has been bound by charm and spirit. He was caged by a woman, but it is the goddess who truly owns him now. That goddess is not just any spirit. She is the queen of the river kingdom, strong and jealous. She takes men, especially those with wealth, beauty, or destiny, and binds them under her throne. She gives them riches in the human world, but in return, she marries them under the water. They belong to her forever. This man, Chike, you called him, he is both alive and not alive. His body is somewhere between your world and hers. His soul is tied to her bed, yet his spirit cries for freedom. That is why you hear his voice. That is why he looks weak. Ada clutched the bottle to her chest, her tears falling harder. Mama, what can I do? She wants him. She wants me too. I cannot fight her. I am only one poor woman. Mama Ijeoma leaned forward, her eyes piercing. It is not you she wants, Ada. It is your heart. She knows your pain, your hunger, your emptiness. She tempts you with wealth because she knows you dream of more. If you give him to her, you will have all you desire, but you will lose your soul. And if you keep him, you will suffer greatly. But there is a third way. Ada looked up, her breath caught. What way? The priestess's voice dropped low. The way of sacrifice. To break her hold, a price must be paid. The river goddess never releases what she has taken without blood. Ada shivered, her fingers trembling on the bottle. Blood, she whispered. Mama Ijeoma nodded. Yes. Either the blood of a goat, white as foam, poured into the river with prayers, or the blood of one who is willing to give their life for him. Ada's chest tightened. But Mama, I have nothing. I cannot buy a goat. And who will give their life for a man trapped in a bottle? The priestess closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. The spirits do not ask what cannot be given. If your heart is true, the river will open a way. But be careful, Ada. The goddess is watching. Even now, she listens to us. She will not let you walk this path easily. If you choose sacrifice, your life will never be the same. Ada wiped her face with her wrapper, her mind spinning. She thought of her empty hut, her hunger, her loneliness. She thought of the storm, of the voice calling her name, of the man's weak eyes looking at her through the glass. Then she thought of herself, small and helpless, standing against a goddess who ruled the waters. Her voice came small but steady. I will not give him to her. Tell me what I must do. Mama Ijeoma leaned back, her face grave but proud. Then prepare yourself. You will need strength you have never known. The river will test you. The goddess will tempt you again and again. But if you stand, you may yet break his chains. As Ada rose to leave, clutching the bottle close, the air in the hut grew cold. A whisper floated through the smoke. Ada, you cannot win, Ada gasped, her knees almost giving way. But Mama Ijeoma shouted, leave, spirit. She is under my roof. The cold vanished. Ada stepped out into the sunlight, her heart heavy but burning with a new fire. For the first time, she felt she had a path, even if it was full of pain. Ada walked back from Mama Ijeoma's hut, her wrapper clinging to her body with sweat. The road was long and dusty, but what weighed heavier was the fear in her chest. She carried the bottle under her wrapper, close to her stomach, as if holding a child. The man inside, Chike, lay pressed against the glass, his tiny eyes looking at her with sadness. She could feel his weakness, as though his strength was fading faster than before. Hold on, she whispered, I will not leave you. But deep inside, she was afraid. The goddess had warned her, and Mama Ijeoma had confirmed it. This was no ordinary battle. That night, as she tried to sleep, the air in her hut grew thick and strange. The crickets outside stopped singing, and the moonlight seemed to vanish. Ada sat up, her heart racing. The bottle on the mat began to glow, soft at first, then brighter, until it filled the hut. Suddenly, water began to drip from the roof, though there was no rain. The drops grew into streams, flowing down the walls and covering the floor. Ada gasped and tried to stand, but the water held her legs like chains. A voice, sweet and dangerous, filled the air. Ada. Ada, you cannot fight me. Give him to me, and I will give you riches. I will give you love. I will make you more than all the women of this village. Ada shook her head, clutching the bottle. Leave me. I will not give him to you. The voice grew louder, like thunder under the water. Stubborn girl. Do you know who I am? I am the goddess of this river, queen of the depths. No woman resists me and lives. The water rose higher, covering Ada's waist, her chest. She screamed, but just then, the bottle shone even brighter. Chike's tiny hands pressed against the glass, and somehow the water began to recede, shrinking back into the earth. The hut grew quiet again. Ada collapsed on the mat, shaking, her wrapper soaked. The bottle dimmed, but Chike's eyes still glowed weakly, as if telling her, do not give up. The next morning, Ada could not hide her fear. She went back to Mama Ijeoma and told her what had happened. The priestess listened, her face dark with worry. The goddess has shown her hand. She will not wait anymore. That glow you saw? It was a spirit resisting her. But he cannot do that for long. You must act quickly, Ada. Ada nodded, though her body trembled. Tell me what to do. Mama Ijeoma stood, her bones cracking, and reached for a small calabash filled with chalk. She drew a circle on the floor of her hut, whispering words Ada did not understand. Then she turned. The sacrifice must be done at the river. But the goat is not enough anymore. She is angry. She wants something deeper. You must prepare your heart, for she will come again, stronger than before. And if your faith breaks, she will take both of you, him into her kingdom forever, and you into madness. Ada held her wrapper tight and whispered, I am ready. But in truth, she was not. She returned home and began to gather what little she had, palm oil, white cloth, a small gourd of water. That night, she sat by the bottle, speaking to Chike softly. I don't know if I will survive this. But I cannot let her win. I cannot let her own you like a slave. The tiny man inside looked at her with such sorrow that Ede felt her heart ache. She reached out and touched the glass, and for the first time, she felt warmth, his hand against hers, even through the prison of the bottle. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "We will fight together." The next evening, the storm came again. But this time, it was not a storm of rain, it was a storm of wind and voices. The trees around the village bent low, and the river roared as if calling Eda's name. She ran to the door of her hut and saw the river rising, spilling its waters across the land, though no rain had fallen from the sky. Villagers ran, shouting, "The goddess is angry. The river is angry." Children cried, women screamed, men tried to hold their homes against the rushing flood. But Ada knew this was for her. She held the bottle close and stepped out into the flood, her feet sinking into the mud. The water swirled around her, cold and strong, but she did not let go. A voice rose from the river, louder than before, shaking the earth. "Ada, you dare stand against me? I will drown this village because of you. Give him to me, or all will suffer." Ada's heart broke at the cries of the people. She fell to her knees in the water, lifting the bottle high. "Take me if you want, but not him. Leave the village alone." The water rose higher, covering her shoulders, but she did not let go. For a moment, she thought it was the end. Then suddenly, the flood stopped. The water pulled back, rushing into the river as if sucked by an unseen hand. The villagers fell silent, watching as Ada stood soaked and trembling, the bottle still in her hand. They whispered among themselves, afraid yet amazed. Ada walked slowly back to her hut, her legs weak. She knew the battle was far from over. The goddess would not forgive her for this. But deep inside, Ada felt something she had not felt before, strength. For the first time, she believed she could fight. The morning after the flood, Ada could hardly breathe from fear and weariness. Her body ached from the fight, and her eyes stung from lack of sleep, yet her spirit refused to break. She had seen the goddess with her power, and she had also seen the man in the bottle glow against her. That gave Ada courage. By sunrise, she wrapped the bottle in white cloth and carried it to Mama Ijeoma's hut. The old woman was already waiting outside, leaning on her staff, her wrapper tied tightly across her chest. "The time has come," she said in a voice that shook with age but also with strength. Ada placed the bottle on the ground, and together they began to walk toward the river. The villagers watched them from their huts, whispering. Some shook their heads, afraid to look too long, while others prayed silently. Nobody dared follow them. Everyone knew this was a battle between Ada, the priestess, and the goddess herself. When they reached the riverbank, the water was strangely still, too calm for a flowing river. Even the birds were silent, as though nature itself was holding its breath. Mama Ijeoma drew a large circle on the ground with white chalk and placed the goat in the center. She lit a small clay lamp and told Ada to kneel with the bottle inside the circle. "Do not move, no matter what happens," she warned. Ada nodded, holding the bottle tightly to her chest. Mama Ijeoma raised her staff, lifted her eyes to the sky, and began to chant words Ada did not understand. The air grew heavy, pressing down on Ada's shoulders, and the river began to ripple, sending small waves against the shore. The sacrifice had begun. As Mama Ijeoma chanted, the wind rose, whistling through the trees. The water in the river swelled and swirled, turning darker and darker until it looked like oil. Then, with a sound like thunder, the river burst upward in a tall column, and from it emerged a woman. Beautiful and terrifying. Her skin shone like bronze, her hair flowed like black silk, and her eyes glowed like two moons. She wore a crown made of shells and pearls, and her voice was like 1,000 waters crashing together. "Who dares call me here?" she thundered. Ada froze, her whole body trembling. Mama Ijeoma stood tall, though her hands shook on her staff. "Great goddess of the river, queen of the depths, I call you because you hold what is not yours. Release this man from your grip. The goddess laughed, a sound that made the ground tremble. You dare. Old woman, do you not know I married him under the water? He belongs to me. His wealth, his soul, his love, all mine. The one who placed him in this bottle came to me. She begged for power, and I gave it. He is bound by blood and charm. No mortal woman can break my claim. Eda's heart cracked at those words. Married. The goddess had taken him as her husband. She looked at Chike in the bottle, and his tiny form shook, his eyes dimming as though he could hear every word. Mama Ijeoma raised her staff higher. You cannot own what was not freely given. Release him now, or face the wrath of the ancestors. At that, the goddess's face darkened, and the calm beauty twisted into fury. The river rose behind her like a giant serpent, ready to strike. Then let us see who has more power, your weak ancestors, or me. The battle began with a roar. The river goddess lifted her hand, and waves exploded from the river, crashing against the shore. Water rushed into the circle, trying to drown Eda, but the chalk line glowed white, holding the flood back like a wall. Eda held the bottle tighter, pressing it against her chest, whispering, hold on, Chike. Mama Ijeoma struck her staff against the ground 3 times, shouting words of power. The earth shook, and from the sky came a rush of wind, scattering the waves. The goat in the circle bleated in terror, and then with one swift motion, Mama Ijeoma cut its throat, letting the blood spill into the soil. The ground drank the blood, and the white chalk circle blazed brighter. The goddess screamed, her voice shattering branches from trees. You think blood can stop me? I am the mother of waters. I am the bride of kings. No one resists me and lives. She raised both hands, and the river rose into a wall taller than the trees, ready to crush them all. Eda closed her eyes, clutching the bottle, praying with all her heart. Suddenly, the bottle began to shine again, brighter than ever before. The light pierced through the water, striking the goddess in the chest. She staggered, screaming in rage. No! He is mine. But in that moment, Eda saw something, Chike's eyes inside the bottle, glowing with a faint light of hope. It was as though he was fighting back too, helping her. Eda's tears streamed down her face as she whispered, we are together, we will not give up. The goddess roared and hurled the great wave forward, and the entire river crashed toward them like a mountain. The ground shook, the air split, and everything went dark. When the great wave struck, Eda thought her life had ended. The noise was louder than thunder, and the weight of the water pressed down on her chest until she could not breathe. She tried to scream, but her mouth filled with river water. Her hands clung tightly to the bottle, refusing to let go even as the current dragged her under. She thought of her mother, of her little hut, of the quiet days before this nightmare began. She thought of Chike too, the tiny man inside the bottle whose faint light had given her courage. She whispered his name in her heart as the water pulled her deeper, deeper, deeper. The world turned dark. No sun, no sky, no land, only endless water around her. Then, slowly, the darkness shifted, glowing with strange blue light. Eda opened her eyes and gasped. She was no longer drowning. She was breathing under the water. The goddess had pulled her into the marine kingdom. The river goddess appeared before Eda, taller and more terrible than before. Her crown of shells gleamed, her gown flowed like liquid silver, and her voice shook the water. So, mortal girl, you dared to challenge me. You spilled blood on the earth, you called on the ancestors, and you thought you could win. But here, beneath the river, you have no power. This is my kingdom, and in my kingdom, you are nothing. Eda shivered, but she refused to bow. She clutched the bottle against her chest, her knuckles white. He does not belong to you, she whispered, her voice trembling but steady. The goddess's eyes flashed like fire. You think love gives you strength? Foolish child. Look. She lifted her hand, and the great doors of the palace opened. Inside, on a throne of power, sat Chike, but no longer tiny, no longer trapped in the bottle. He was tall, strong, and dressed in golden robes. He rose slowly and walked to the goddess, bowing low before her. "My husband," the goddess said proudly, placing her hand on his shoulder. "He is bound to me forever. The charm holds his heart, the sea holds his soul, and I hold his love. He does not even remember you." Ada gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Chike," she whispered, but he did not look at her. The bottle in her hands grew cold and heavy, as though mocking her hope. The goddess laughed, her voice rolling like thunder through the water. "Do you see now? You are nothing. Leave him and return to your world, or stay and drown in sorrow." Ada fell to her knees, clutching the bottle so tightly it cut into her skin. She wanted to scream, to beg, to fight, but her body shook with despair. Then, faintly, the bottle in her arms glowed again, just a small spark, but enough to make her lift her head. She remembered the moment at the river when Chike's eyes had shone with hope. He was fighting. Somewhere deep inside, he had not given up. She wiped her tears and rose slowly to her feet. Her voice trembled, but she spoke. "You cannot erase love. You cannot erase truth. I will not leave him." The goddess's laughter died, replaced by a snarl. "Then you will see what it means to defy me." She struck her staff against the palace floor, and the sea trembled. From the shadows emerged monstrous guards, their bodies half human, half serpent, their teeth sharp as knives. They surrounded Ada, hissing, their eyes glowing red. Chike stood motionless, his face blank, his body stiff as though chained by invisible ropes. Ada pressed the bottle against her heart, whispering, "Hold on, Chike. I will fight for you." The goddess's voice thundered across the hall. "Then fight, mortal girl. Let us see if your love can stand against the power of the sea." And with that, the guards leapt forward, their claws slicing the water, as Ada braced herself for a battle she had never imagined. The guards rushed at Ada with a speed that shook her heart. Their bodies were like shadows, their eyes red like burning fire. They moved in circles around her, their claws sharp enough to tear stone. Ada wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Her feet trembled, but her hands held the bottle close to her chest. The first guard struck, swinging its arm at her head. Ada ducked, feeling the water ripple around her hair. She screamed, not with fear, but with anger. "You will not take him from me," she cried. Suddenly, the bottle in her arms glowed brighter than before. A sharp light burst out, hitting the guard in the chest. It howled and fell back, twisting in pain. Ada gasped. The bottle was fighting with her, protecting her. The guards roared and attacked together, but every time they came close, the bottle sent out sparks of light, forcing them back. The marine palace shook with their screams. Chike stood at the throne, still bound by the goddess's spell, his face blank and his eyes lifeless. But Ada saw his fingers twitch, saw the faintest sign that somewhere inside, he was struggling to return. She shouted, her voice filling the waters, "Chike, fight. Remember who you are. Remember me." The goddess's face twisted with rage. "Enough," she roared. She raised her staff, and the guards vanished into smoke. The water boiled as the goddess stepped down from her throne. Her gown of silver turned into flowing waves, and her eyes blazed like two suns. "You dare to wound my kingdom with your stubborn love," she hissed. Ada was shaking, but she stood her ground. "I dare," she said softly, because love is stronger than your chains." The goddess struck her staff, and the sea floor cracked. A whirlpool rose around Ada, pulling her toward a deep black pit. She screamed, clutching the bottle, but the current dragged her down. Just before she fell into the abyss, a hand grabbed hers. She looked up, it was Chike. His eyes were still empty, his face still stiff, but his hand was warm. For a moment, Ada saw his true self breaking through. "Chike," she whispered. The goddess screamed, her voice shaking the waters. "Do not touch her." She flung her power at him, but the chain of shells around his neck cracked, one by one. Chike winced as if waking from a long nightmare. His voice came, weak but clear, "Ada." The bottle in Ada's arms blazed with the brightest light yet. It cracked, the glass shattering into 1,000 pieces, but instead of water rushing in, the pieces turned into glowing stars that circled Ada and Chike. The spell that bound him broke with a shattering sound. Chike staggered, his eyes clear now, his face filled with life. He fell into Ada's arms, holding her tightly as though afraid she would vanish. The goddess screamed again, her body shaking with fury. The palace walls cracked, the towers trembled, and the whole marine kingdom began to collapse. "You cannot take him. He is mine forever," she cried. But Chike rose, holding Ada's hand. "I was never yours," he said, his voice firm. Together, they lifted their hands, and the circle of glowing stars spun faster, forming a shield around them. The goddess struck again and again, but the light pushed her back, burning her skin. With one final roar, she vanished into the shadows of the deep. The palace fell apart, the creatures scattered, and the waters grew still. Ada and Chike floated together, their arms locked. "You came for me," he whispered. Ada smiled through her tears. "I never left you." The next moment, they found themselves rising. The sea carried them upward, past broken towers and fleeing creatures, past shells that had lost their shine, past the fading palace of the goddess. The light around them glowed brighter and brighter until, at last, they burst through the river's surface. Ada gasped, filling her lungs with fresh air. The sky above was golden with sunset, and the village lay quiet in the distance. Chike coughed and laughed at the same time, tears running down his cheeks. He was free. They swam to the riverbank, their clothes heavy, their bodies weak, but their hearts full. Ada fell on the sand, her chest heaving. Chike lay beside her, staring at the sky as if he was seeing it for the first time. For a long time, they said nothing. The only sound was the water moving gently, as if the river itself was sighing with relief. At last, Chike turned to Ada. His eyes were soft, his voice broken with emotion. "You saved me," he whispered. Ada shook her head, smiling through her tears. "No. We saved each other." He touched her hand, and she held his, the warmth between.